Hello, my name is Diana Naratsky, and this is my capstone original contribution for my master's in teaching English learners at American College of Education. This is a um, webinar where we're going to discuss how middle school teachers, content teachers best can best support new students who are new arrivals and do not speak English. So first, you might be thinking, help, I'm getting a new student who doesn't speak English. How can I teach a student that doesn't speak English? Well, in this webinar, I'm going to show you many tools and strategies that you can use to best help the students. And there are some other cultural considerations and ways to help the students acclimate to your class. So let's begin. So as far as cultural considerations, students may be coming from an area where they're fleeing violence, or they may have interrupted schooling. So you will want to learn about your students' culture. There are probably cultural differences. And if you know about these differences and you know about their culture, you will be able to prevent any misunderstandings. So here are some examples of some cultural differences that you may find in communication. First, some students might avoid eye contact, whereas in the American culture, eye contact is a symbol that the students are paying attention and understanding. In some cultures, they want to be respectful. So if you understand that in their culture, maybe avoiding eye contact is actually a sign of respect and a sign that they are listening, you will understand that they're not meaning to look like that they are not being respectful or not listening. Many times in our American culture, if somebody nods their head and smiles, that may indicate to you that they are understanding what you're saying. However, in some other cultures, head nods and smiles may indicate that they're listening, but not that they understood anything. So you will want to find out what this body language means in the other cultures. And another example, if you don't know an answer in American culture, you can guess. But in other cultures, it may be seen as disrespectful if you just guessed. You would be wasting other people's time with the wrong answer. So that might be one way that the other cultures might there might be a misunderstanding. Some other cultural considerations to understand is that in other cultures, they may very much value respecting authority in a different way that it is seen here in the United States. So those students may find it very difficult to say what their opinion is, or critique others' work, or even ask questions. So understanding the other cultures would be one way that you would need to understand. Also, it varies across the world for concepts of time. In America, we very much value being on time. But in other areas, if they if an appointment is at a certain time, and there is a relationship that you need to take care of, being late is not considered rude. So that is one big area that different cultures have as far as the concepts of time. One thing that I didn't add on here is personal space. In America, we like to have our personal space, but in other cultures, standing very close to, or what we would consider very close to somebody, they would consider very, very normal. So be aware that other cultures may have different concepts of personal space. Another thing to think about is group work. So in other cultures and other schools across the world, they may not necessarily have experience working in groups. So if you would like the new students to work in a group with other students, you may need to be very explicit in teaching the roles within the group. And then lastly, understand that the teaching styles, the different types of curricula, and even the student's background may have been completely different in the student's previous school. So will probably be a very steep learning curve as far as learning how your school functions. So next, when you get a new student, the first thing that you will really want to do is acclimate the new student to your class. So do what you can to learn about the student's home language, their academic background, and other factors. These things will affect how they function and the accommodations and modifications that you will need to make in your classroom. So one big thing is, are they literate in their native language? If they have attended school in their native country and not have had interrupted schooling, chances are that they are literate in their native language, and that makes things so much easier because you will be able to use translation tools because the student is able to read. If they are functionally illiterate in their native language, that makes things much more difficult because the student doesn't have the school background of the previous 5 or 6 or even 7 years of schooling that the other students in your class have. And depending on the student's language, you may be able to use translation tools that have audio, but it will be teaching a student in your class, say math and social studies, will be that much more difficult if the students are not literate in their native language. Another thing that you will want to find out is if there are any bilingual students in your class who speak their language. the bilingual student will be able to help the new student immensely if that is the case. So find that out. And if there are, then ensure that those students sit together and work together. And then tying back to the, are they literate in their native language? Another question is, do they have interrupted schooling? So they may have had some schooling, and they may be able to read to some extent in their native language, but they may not have had the equivalent number of years of schooling as the other students in the class. So that will mean that the student has many gaps that will need to be filled in order to try to catch them up with their peers. And then nextly, did they leave their home country in difficult circumstances? So if they are fleeing a country due to violence or war or some other way, they probably have trauma in their background. And you will want to be cognizant of that in your interactions with the new student. And then find out the student's interests and strengths. So if the student is interested in soccer, or if they're good at math, or fabulous artists, find out these interests and use those interests. Find other students that are interested in the same thing. This will help create a welcoming environment to the new student. And tying in with that, create a welcoming atmosphere in your classroom. So you will want to make sure that you learn how to pronounce the new student's name correctly. If you're not sure, ask them to pronounce it and repeat for you to repeat it from them, and make sure you are pronouncing their name correctly. And then find a friendly student. If you don't have a student that speaks their language, you may have other friendly students that are very willing to give the new student a hand. And one thing that I've seen our students do is they will pull up Google Translate on a Chromebook and communicate between themselves. The American student typing in what they want to say and then translating it into the new student's native language, and then vice versa. So when they communicate, they type it in and they are able to communicate and make friends. Nextly, be sure to smile and use positive body language. You want to make the new student feel that they are welcomed into your classroom, and that is a big key. And then invite the student's language and culture into the classroom. So if you can label items with the English word, and then so that they can start learning what things are in the classroom. If you have reading materials that you can get in the student's native language, or like, for instance, if your class is reading a novel, see if you can find a copy of that novel in their native language so that they can read the same book in their native language. Posters, if you put up posters with flags of their country, or posters that have photographs of people that look like them, that will show that your class is welcoming to diverse cultures and diverse languages. Nextly, with your new student, these translation tools will be a huge help um, for making your assignments and your notes comprehensible to your new student and accessible. When they can understand the material in their native language, if you then present the material in English, they will have a better idea of what you are trying to explain, and they will be able to learn it. When you translate words, the students will be able to acquire the English vocabulary. Please note, though, that when you're teaching science, social studies, and math, any of the subjects really, just like the native students are learning the vocabulary, the academic vocabulary in English, the new student is probably also learning that vocabulary in their native language as well. So they're learning this content, they're learning the vocabulary of their native language, but they don't necessarily have a background of already knowing it. So they will be learning their own vocabulary and the English vocabulary at the same time. And this is hard to do, and you need to be very patient with them. And then if you use these translation tools, the students will be more engaged in the material. They will feel that their native language is valued and respected by you, the teacher, that especially you don't have to have a class that's 100% English. You can incorporate the bilingual languages in your classroom with their native language and English, and the students will learn just as much. In fact, they will be learning more, because if they don't understand the material because it's only presented in English, they're going to get bored, and they're going to just be lost. So one word of caution, though, after the students have been in the country for a while and have learned some English, there is a tendency to have an over-reliance of translation tools. So after a while, you'll want to teach the students how to just translate strategically. So instead of typing a paragraph in their native language and translating the entire paragraph into English and copying and pasting it, what if they only look up the words that they aren't sure about? So if there's a word that they want to say, but they don't know how to say it in English, just look up a single word to fill in the blanks. This will help them work on their English skills. But at first, with the new students, let them use the translation tools. It will really help them in the class. So here are some tools that you can use. Google Translate is probably the most popular one, and it has so many functions within it. You can bring up Google Translate on a laptop, and the students can type in their language, translate it into English, and then copy the English into documents. So this will make them able to complete the work for your class. There is a function within Google Translate called Google Lens, and it is actually really neat. You click on the Google Lens, and then you point your camera at an entire sheet of text. You can even point the camera up to a whiteboard, And right on the screen of the phone, it will translate the whole entire page into another language, and the student can read the page live on the screen. There is also a way to communicate two-way with the conversation feature of Google Translate. It uses the microphone within Google Translate. It does tend to be a little bit slow, so it's probably not very feasible to use it if you are lecturing in the class. But if you need to communicate something quickly without, typing in, that is one thing you might want to try. So G Suite has tools. If you go into Google Docs, you can translate an entire page into another language. It's built right in. If you are having students do a web quest or get on a website, if they're using Chrome, they can right-click the mouse on the page, choose Translate To, and then choose the language. And my newcomer students get very good at doing this because there are a lot of sites that their classes use, and this is built right in. It works very well. If you want to try automatic translated captions, does not work in some of the rarer languages, but it does work in languages like Spanish. You could set up a Google Meet within your classroom, and then if you are speaking into a microphone, it will translate your lecture in real time on the student's screen. So that is something that you could try, see if it works. And then as for Google Slides, a lot of our teachers use Google Slides for their classroom notes. So if you want to translate Google Slides or the notes, you have to use an add-on. And most of the add-ons require payment, but there is one called Translate My Slide, and you can use it for free if you don't need too many translations within 24 hours. So if you just have like one set of notes for 1 week, that would be sufficient to use for the free version. So search for the Translate My Slide add-on for Google Slides and try that out. Some other technology tools that you might want to try with your newcomer student. There is a Chrome extension called Language Reactor, and you can add subtitles to YouTube videos, and it will have 2 rows of subtitles on a video. So you can have, like, say, English and then Spanish, one above the other, so that your videos that you might show in your class will be accessible to your new student. If you have an Office 360 account, you can create live captions in PowerPoint. So this is kind of similar to how you could do it within Google Meet, only doing it with PowerPoint. You do have to have a strong internet connection for this to work. Another app that some teachers use, I have not tried this one, but it is the Microsoft Translate app. So the student has a device, and then the teacher has a device, and the student joins your conversation, and then the teacher speaks into their phone with the transcript of what the teacher is saying translated onto the student's device. So that is one thing to try. You will want to make sure that you have good communication with students' parents. And here are some tools that you can use to do that. One is called DeepL. It is a website. And if you are sending documents home, you can translate the documents. It uses AI, so I hear that the translations are better than they are using simply Google Translate. And this is one way to translate documents for parents. Another one is called Talking Points, which is made by a nonprofit. And it is made for schools and educators to communicate with parents. You can write messages in English and it will auto-translate the messages into the parent's language. And you can use it with texting on a web browser or with the app. So sometimes with parents, they have a hard time with anything that requires instructions. So the fact that it can be used with text makes it very easy for parents to use and then communicate with the teacher. So starting with some teaching strategies. When you get a new student that does not speak any English, just adjusting your teaching strategies will make a world of difference. Um, uh, One thing that you can do is when you are speaking, incorporate gestures, point to what you mean. Use your hands when you talk to emphasize what you're saying. And this will make your speech, even if they don't understand the exact words, they will have a better idea of what you are saying and make your speech more comprehensible. Another thing that you can do is to use images and diagrams as much as possible. If, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and if you can use images to help your students understand, you can use Google Images. If you have diagrams to illustrate what you're talking about, use those. It will also help when you're teaching new vocabulary for students to connect these ideas with the photographs and images. Nextly, speak clearly facing the students. I've been learning Spanish myself for a while, and I find that some people just do not speak clearly. And in other conditions, I can understand them just fine if they speak clearly, but many people do not. And this makes it extremely difficult to understand them, even when generally I have a good comprehension. So make sure that you are speaking clearly, that you are enunciating, that maybe you're not speaking too fast, and make sure that you are facing the students so that they can get more information from your facial expressions and your gestures. And then lastly here, incorporate small group instruction. So when you have the new students grouped with friendly peers, not only will they get speaking practice, but they will also get extra help on their assignments. So when you have a class of 25, even 30 students, it is hard to give your English learner as much help as they need. So if they are learning in small groups with their peers, they will have peers that can help them along, especially if one of them is bilingual in their language, which I know is not always possible, but if it is possible, make sure that the bilingual classmate is in their group. If you are a teacher of social studies, keep in mind that much of the time social studies requires background knowledge and vocabulary that the new student may not possess at all. For example, they may have no idea who George Washington or Abraham Lincoln are at all because their schooling was in another country. And without that background knowledge, in order for them to understand the lesson, those gaps will need to be filled. Some ways to do that is to build their background knowledge using multiple means. So you can use videos, you can use diagrams, you can use pictures. If they have a high level understanding of what you're going to teach, then this background knowledge will help them understand the concepts. So, and nextly, ensure that your input is comprehensible to the student using technology. So you can use demonstrations, visual aids, graphic organizers, hands-on materials, and the translation tools that I already went over. There is also an online tool called Rewordify. So if there is a complex text, which at the middle school level, they generally are fairly complex, you can put the text into Rewordify to simplify it. And then if the student is using the translation tools, it will help them understand, learn the new vocabulary in English without the text being so complicated that that it'll be way over their head even with the translation. For science, some strategies that you can use, firstly, is to use pictures and diagrams whenever possible to show the concepts. This is probably the number one thing, even for the native English speakers in your class that are learning these new science topics. One thing that you can try is to create outlines of the big ideas from the lessons. The students can see how the ideas are connected. They don't have as many words to translate, and they can have a better idea. They can actually learn the big ideas from your lessons. You will want to try to use cooperative learning and hands-on learning as much as possible. The nice thing about science is there are a lot of hands-on learning that you can use, what with experiments and simulations to teach the concepts. And another thing is if the student speaks a Romance language like Spanish or French, in science, there are tons of cognates. So the vocabulary will be very similar. For example, energía cinética, or kinetica, sorry. And the English is kinetic energy. So you can see how similar that is. And there are so many more examples of words that come from the Latin in science. For math, you will want to note that in math, there may be differences in mathematical notations in other countries. For example, how they show long division, how they may use a period as the thousandth separator, but a comma as a decimal point. That is one thing that's very common. One thing you might want to try is to use manipulatives when you're teaching math concepts. That will take a bit of the language out of it and still teach them the underlying concept. Another tool that is useful for math is that Khan Academy, the website, has math courses for all the grade levels and with videos in other languages. They have Spanish, French, even sign language. So if you go into the Khan Academy website, scroll to the bottom, change the language to the desired language, and then choose a course. It will have explanation videos teaching your concepts in the other language. So, so if you want to make use of that with your new student, that is one way to make the math lessons comprehensible. For assessments, first thing you will want to do is to speak with your ELL specialist and follow your district's grading policy. They may have a specific grading policy that they will want you to follow for for your newcomer students, and your ELL specialist is the best resource to find out what that is. So in your class, you will want to differentiate for the newcomer student the lessons and the assessments whenever possible, so you can allow the student to show their knowledge in other ways. So whether it's draw pictures, whether it is writing their response in Spanish and then you translating it into English. But if your district does not have a grading policy, one option that you may want to consider for grading newcomer ELLs is not to assign letter grades, but pass fail based on their effort, how much they've grown. So for example, if they started out at like a first grade level for math and they have grown to a third grade level, that is a huge amount of growth in a short amount of time. So, and then content mastery. So you will want to determine what is mastery, but based on their level of English language proficiency. So there are ELL standards that your ELL specialist can share with you to help you with that. But in your class, make sure that you aim to grade equitably. Use the available scaffolding techniques to support your ELLs in achieving the content standards and their language standards, and collaborate with your ELL teacher at your school in your grading and assessment of your students. So thank you. Here are the references from my webinar. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much.